Hello, everyone. Hello, Derry. Derry's also watching football. So hopefully they continue to stay in the lead, whoever the team is. Manchester, maybe? I think that's her team.
Manchester's this evening.
This evening.
Well, at least Manchester United is this evening because the game kicks off at 5:30. I feel very in the know for once.
All right, anyways, we're not here to talk football, aka soccer. We are here to talk Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier, the first book in the Sevenwaters trilogy. We'll talk about that later. But first, before we get into the discussion, I'm gonna let everybody introduce themselves. We'll do round robin.
Hello, I'm Vish from Books with V, and I read fantasy and everything else in between. I read a lot of everything else in between right now.
I'm Sarah from Sarah Reads. I read a lot at one point, but apparently I don't anymore because for the last couple of months it's been a bigger struggle, but also mostly fantasy, but a little bit of everything.
Hello.
Yeah, whoever.
I am Jolien from Jolien Reads. I also read a lot of fantasy, and Daughter of the Forest is my favorite book of all time. So I'm really excited that all of you have picked it up, and I think loved it. So yes, excited for the discussion.
Hi, I'm Sam. I am not on BookTube, but I have a underwhelming Instagram account that has 3 posts on it. And I read fantasy and a little bit of sci-fi. I like to say that I read both, but I read fantasy and maybe one sci-fi every now and then.
And you have the most bougie bookshelves. Nothing but special editions.
Paperbacks are shunned.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a mass market paperback.
No, I
just
have
a
to.
paperback is shunned.
Yeah.
Hi.
I buy
I'm
them for
Abby.
this.
Hi, I'm Abby from the channel Abby Salter. I also read predominantly fantasy, although I think it might be a romance month this month after I've really overdosed on the fantasy in March. But generally, fantasy, occasionally some sci-fi, romance, a whole mixture, variety of things.
Nice. I think we can all thank Jolien for getting us started on this book. Because I feel like you are the one that is like proselytized about this book in this series. So thank you, Jolien.
You're welcome.
We are going to limit the discussion to obviously this first book. We'll have live show discussions of the second and third book, and then if we decide to continue on with the second trilogy in this series, we'll figure that out. But back to this. Overall, non-spoiler, how did you guys like the book, and how would you like, if you liked it, assuming you did, how would you like sell it to people who haven't read it before? Jolien, if you want to do it since you're the...
Well, I think if you like fairy tale retellings with beautiful writing style and a strong female character who might not be like very... Often when you have a strong female character in fantasy, it's like a warrior, and here it's a different kind of strong. So if you like that, just the original fairy tales, but with an extra twist to it, I think that a lot of people would like this. I think that it's also pretty historically accurate, with of course fantasy on top of it, but the history of that time, I think that was respected as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really liked is how not only atmospheric it was, but like it felt very real. Like, so.
I'd say if you like a book that has lots of character and world building, so it's very exposition heavy, particularly in the beginning, then you'll probably like it as well. It does have a plot, definitely, but I feel as though at the beginning there's like a lot of setup. So if you enjoy really getting introduced to a world and characters and really getting to know them as people, and well, the world's not a person, but like really getting to know that setting, then I think you'll enjoy it.
I think I think the main thing to take away from this is just to enjoy the journey of the story. It's very much like the journey and not the destination, and I really like that.
Isn't that like a Brandon Sanderson quote or something?
Oh, I don't know.
Journey
Funny.
to Destination.
I am reading Hero Bakery. No.
It's still my archive thing. Journey before
Is it?
destination.
No,
The
no, no.
opposite is an Allen quote: "Destination before journey." Sorry, my kids are having a moment upstairs, so I will try to keep on mute as much as I can. But I was just going to add that going into this, it is a romantic fairy tale. It does have that beautiful style, but it doesn't shy away from the darkness of the time period either. Like, this is a very heavy book along with being a really beautiful book. So I think sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, when I sell it, I always talk about how beautiful it is and the prose and the characters. And then people read it and they're like, whoa, I was not expecting it to be this heavy. And it is. But I think that Juliette Merlier does a good job with that. And it doesn't feel gratuitous, but it does feel true to the real struggles that people had at that time.
It definitely had some darker moments, some that I wasn't expecting. Maybe I should have looked up trigger warnings, but I didn't. And so when there was a scene that was quite graphic, I was like, this is really dark. And I'm glad I'm not reading this just before bed, because otherwise that would have been the tone for my sleep. Luckily, I was able to keep going a bit longer after that. And so
we ended up reading it at that scene at the same time and sending messages saying, you probably don't want to read this right before bed.
Prepare yourself.
Thanks for warning me. It was a good time.
As Melly said, fairy tale retelling, but Robin Hobb style. I think that's perfect. So, yeah. So it starts off pretty slow, which I imagine could turn some people off, but I surprisingly really enjoyed it because of the writing style. I do have to admit, it took me a minute to get adjusted to the writing style because it's kind of like, it's not really first person. She's telling her own story after the fact, but it's also present tense. It was kind of weird for me to wrap my head around initially. But then once I got used to it, I'm like, oh, it lends to like this fairy tale-esque type quality to it. So
I'd say as well, the chapters are very long. So it can feel like you're reading for a very long time until you finish a chapter.
Yeah. There's like 20 chapters.
If you don't know the fairy tale, I probably would recommend not reading the blurb, because the blurb and the synopsis actually describes the story that starts like 100 pages in. And so the first 100 pages, which are slower, I was reading it, waiting until we got to the point in the blurb. And I was like, where are we heading with this? Like, when are we going to get to the actual synopsis of the book? Yeah. Whereas if I didn't know about that synopsis, I think I would have maybe enjoyed those 100 pages more.
Yeah.
I found that, at least my synopsis, you don't actually get to like, the synopsis sort of gives you a setup and you don't get to that setting up point until halfway through the book. So I wish I didn't read it because it kind of spoiled it for me.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. It was when I got into the second half and past that synopsis, I was like, okay, now we're like, that's when I started to really, really enjoy it, I think.
I think that it's quite similar in that aspect, at least, to Dune, where you also have the premise at the back of the book, and then it takes like halfway through the book before you actually get there. So I can definitely see that a lot of people then are waiting when it's going to happen. But for me, I actually like that more because I'm like, okay, I know where the plot is going. Now I'm going to really focus on the characters and everything else. So I almost know that I don't really need to remember a lot of things because we're only at the beginning. But yeah, it's definitely very slow, and there are like super long chapters. So for some people, I can definitely see that start, it might be best not to read the premise. At least if you know a lot about fairy tales, because I read the premise and I knew the fairy tale beforehand. So then, yeah, you know what's going to happen.
I think the audiobook is really good for that. Let's say if it is long chapters, I think it's really good. You won't notice the long chapters, and also because she's telling you the story, it kind of feels like someone is telling you a story via audiobook. So I definitely recommend the audiobook for sure.
The audiobook was great.
Who narrated the audiobook?
I will check.
It's funny though how longer chapters, and I don't know about the editions that you guys have, but I have the like tall paperback. And there's so many words on a page, and the pages are so large that it really does feel like when you're reading the chapters that you're reading for a long time. And it's just interesting to think about our brains and how if the chapters were cut up into, 5-page chapters, it makes it feel like it's a lot shorter than it actually is. Because it's not a super long book. It's less than 5. It's only 400 pages.
Yeah, but
Wow.
our edition's 400 pages. But
That's
I think
true.
Sam's edition was like 600 and something pages.
670.
What
I don't
did
know where
you-
those 270 pages
Where
went.
they came in.
I guess they went in the margins.
But I actually read it quite quickly because I was really hooked by it and wanted to know what was going to happen to our characters. I was invested in them. So although it was long and I felt like I was reading for ages when I was reading each chapter, I was really invested to get back to it and keep reading it.
The narrator is Terry Donnelly. And the second book, the narrator is different.
Oh.
Yes.
That kind of makes sense, though, if
Yeah,
I understand what the second book direction it goes in.
Oh, and I guess the biggest thing is like this is a standalone story. So like if you just want to read this book, you don't have to continue a 3 to 6 book series. So
But you'll want to.
it's
Yes.
true. It's true. I think it helps if there isn't. Yeah, I mean I would definitely agree with Derry. I honestly forgot that it was a fairy tale retelling, even though it says on the front fairy tale and romance and legend, and I'm like totally forgot about those things.
I feel like it might have become a bit more known because Six Crimson Cranes. Is it Six Crimson Cranes? That one came out, and that's based on the same fairy tale, which I've not read.
Did not know that. Yeah, so you want to talk about the obvious? Sorka, Sirha, however you want to say it. We're
In
gonna
my
go ahead and
head,
get
it was
into
Sorsha.
We're gonna go ahead and get into spoilers, by the way. Like, don't worry about not spoiling anything. So, I can't. Yeah. How did you like Sirha, meeting her and her development? I guess.
I kind of loved her from the start. There's something very endearing about her, and I like reading about big families and castle settings. So I was already like just in it from the beginning, and then once. Oh wait, are we getting to spoilers?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. So once it got to the assault scene,
Chapter
I was
6. Very
fiercely protective of her, and if anyone looked at her funny, I wanted to scratch their eyes out. It was an intense protectorship that I had over her.
I was very nervous for her. I was like, you better be okay because you need to be protected, and so you better come out of this okay.
Yeah, I think Juliet Marillier did a really good job of building her character as and her strength even before that scene. She can stand on her own, but you still, like you said, Sam, like you said, Abby, you want to protect her at the same time. She doesn't need protecting; she can take care of herself. That doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen to her, obviously. But I just like the way the character. Sorry, my cat just ran out of the room. I just like the way that she built her character and portrayed her. So
I was very invested in her.
Yeah.
She's quite similar to, I hate to bring up Hob again, but Hob is also very hard on her characters. And it's because of that the slightest bit of joy they have is tenfold. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't know. There's something about seeing them go through horrible situations that gives you that sort of instant connection.
Yeah.
I think the reason I like the slow start is because it gave us a chance to see her as part of her family, and seeing her as a sister to her brothers makes you care about her in that way as well. You can see the dynamics and see how close they all are. And I think that really helps. It helps develop the brothers and make them feel very clear, because we get to see how she views them. But it also helps us understand what is special about her, how, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, how she fits into her family and all those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just love those coming of age stories in general. And you have that with Fitz and Robin Hobb as well. And then you feel so connected to them because you knew them from when they were a child, and they were so precious and innocent, and you want them to remain that way. So when then something bad happens to them, it's really heartbreaking. So it's part of the reason why I like those slow starts so much.
I did age her up like maybe 2 years or something, from where she is at the end of the book. Like at some point I was like, well, is she really acting like a 12-year-old? Or so I sort of,
it kind of starts. Yeah. So she starts off at like 12 in the book and ends at 16, 17, 16. Yeah.
And I might have put her at like 18 in my head at the end.
Yeah, I always try to like understand it in that day and age, but for us it sometimes feels icky, because in my head she's also older, just because that's what feels natural.
Yeah.
And then when you think, oh, she's only 16 at the end, it's sometimes weird to think about that.
The historical context is always important. You have to think about what the lifespan was, like how old people actually lived to be, what constituted middle age. It's the same thing if you ever read the Warlord Chronicles. Like, they are getting married at 13 because they're going to die by 30. Like they're almost halfway through their life at that point. So it is strange sometimes to look back at it through a modern lens, because it is icky for us. Like these are children in the modern sense, but they were warriors and people who are already gone off to leave home in the Middle Ages. I don't remember what century this takes place in, but is it the 6th century maybe?
I think so.
Is it?
6 or 9, somewhere around that.
Somewhere around then.
I'll
But
just
it's
make her like 2 extra years
definitely
in my head.
Yeah, I think in the same way that I aged Sarah up, I also aged Red down. Just so that their age gap was a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Well, that was just for my like creep factor, but then it's different times. So.
Well, he was only 6 years older than her, right?
I thought he was 9.
9? Oh, oops.
I might be wrong.
Maybe you aged him down as well.
Maybe. Yeah. So I guess kind of going. Kind of segue into that, like we already talked about briefly about her relationship, Sorka's relationship with her brothers, and I guess now we can do like Red, and we can talk about the brothers and stuff like that. Well, I'm probably skipping ahead a little bit, but like the slow start, I think for me also developed the land that she was in, and made me connected to the land itself for when she is taken to, I guess, what would now be England. But the brothers themselves, Finbar, I love. From the beginning, I loved him. And it was it Finbar was the one that found Simon?
Yes.
Or,
that saved him.
Yeah.
And that's really I think that's the catalyst of the story is Simon, and he was captured, right? And then tortured and stuff like that. So how did you like that entire scene with her taking care of him and nursing him back to health and stuff? Sorry, I'm looking at chat.
Well, for the longest time, I thought that she was going to end up with Simon. And maybe I'm stupid, but it took me really until the end before I realized, there's a romance going on between her and Red. Because I kept thinking about Simon. And I felt a little bit betrayed at the beginning. I'm like, Simon is going to come back. But I liked that twist as well. And I think maybe if it's not your first Juliette Merlier, you might have noticed that sooner. But because it was my first, and I think for all of you as well, it takes a while before you realize what's going on.
It was a very slow. when we first met Red, because I knew that there was going to be a romance because of the synopsis. I was like, nah, it can't be Red. It'll be Simon. Like he'll come back or something. And then it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't until the end that Red was sort of telling his story and putting everything into context that I realized that she duped me like the whole time. I've been fooled.
Oh, I mean, when there was the scenes with Simon in the beginning, I was like, okay, yeah, right, romance with Simon. And then as soon as we met Red, I was like, Red's the love interest.
Oh, okay.
I was like straight on the Red's the love interest train.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's going to have the whole dynamic if the brother comes back, because the brother obviously has feelings for her. But no, I was straight on the Red train.
Same.
I kind of forgot that there was going to be a romance in it because I was like so invested in Sorka and her creating these shirts that I'm like, even though it says it, romance on the cover, I'm like, oh, I'm still surprised that there was a romance involved. But
I was like waiting for them to like hold hands or just look at each other. I was so invested in their romance. Like there were some romances, because I do enjoy a romance, and I'll be like, oh, can I have some more emotional connection between the two of you? Like I get it, you seem to like each other physically, but like where's the emotional side? This one I was just like, can you just hold hands? Hold hands, please. I was so invested in them. I was like, just be cute together.
We just need one little thing.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I really liked about just the entire arc, and then like with Sorka individually, and then also with her relationship with Red. The care that she took in developing Sorka's character, like the chapter 6 scene of her assault is not gratuitous, but it's not like, oh, it's used to make her stronger. She was already strong before. And then I think it was a way to build up her walls against people and her connections with people. And then Red himself as a character, stereotypically, you would see like, oh, just like, you would think that he would like try and work through it, like not work through it, but like force a connection with her physically. But he took the care, and he actually cared about her and took his time and was slow with her, and they got to know each other as friends. Like even though he liked her, obviously, I feel like there is a basis of friendship there that and respect. So
I liked seeing her grow to trust him and like seeing their connection form.
Yeah.
Sorry, internet problems.
No worries. We were just talking about Sorka and Red and the respect that Red has for Sorka.
I love that scene on the beach. Like he takes her to that little cove and they spend it together. It felt like they were both vulnerable with each other for the first time, and it was just really sweet. I love that.
Yeah, there's so much emotional intimacy. Like Abby said, you don't get that a lot in romance because romances are usually, at least like the rom-com ones, are lighter, breezy. You get kind of the physical part before the emotional part, but there's so much here and so much that has to be understated because it can't be communicated through speech. So you just have to look at how they interact with each other, the gestures. It's a lot.
And it's, I don't know how to put it into words, but the way that Marillier just builds this character, builds Sorka and builds her connection with people without using words. It's just, so good. I sound like Alan, so good.
But speaking of like the fact that she couldn't talk, I think that added to sort of how attached I got to her, because she almost felt like her voice, or like you, like if someone, like I don't know, I would find myself talking on her behalf, like yeah.
And
you're listening into like her deepest thoughts as well. Like she's getting more vulnerable with you, so you have a deeper understanding of what she's going through and what she's thinking.
Yeah, kind of reminded me of Ariel from The Little Mermaid.
And I did like, I mean, jumping to the end, like that scene at the end where she does shout and to save Red's life, and then she's like, oh my god, what have I done? Because this means I could have lost my brothers from trying to save him. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, when that happened, I was like, oh my god. Like, I was so shocked and amazed, and I was so scared for like the brothers as well, and just that was very exciting in a weird way.
It's interesting how intense like one word can be. You've been waiting this whole novel, and then it's just one word. Like, what's happening? It was really emotional.
So I guess to kind of go back, the reason why she can't talk, and the reason this whole retelling is in place, Lady Una. Did you like her as a character? Do you think that she could have been more developed? Or
question.
I said, did you like her before as a character? I was like,
I mean, you can like a terrible character,
but as a character, okay, she's despicable.
She is.
Yeah.
But like, I still want to see more of her in the coming books because I want to know who she is and why she's doing it.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to get more of her.
Yeah.
I feel like she's going to be a presence.
Yeah. I don't like her and I don't want her to hurt everyone, but also like I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know what her motivations are. Like,
Yes.
Because we don't really know what they are in this. We don't know why she has chosen to inflict this pain on this family. Like, what has prompted her to do this? Is it a revenge type thing from something in her past? Or I don't know, like, did she have brothers that were conscripted into the army for the whatever the father's called, and then they were killed off or something? I don't know, like, did something prompt her to seek revenge?
Or is it just because it's her nature? Because I remember her saying how she is the dark side of the fairy queen or something like that.
The Lady of the Forest.
Yeah. So I just want to know, like,
is it like a trickster type thing?
Maybe in the future books, maybe we'll find out more about the magic and the forest, and that will help us understand her a little bit more.
I'm also interested in what happened to you.
Like, don't give anything away.
I'm also interested in like what happened to Simon. Like, we get told that he was taken by the fairies and he lived many, many years with them. But like, what does that mean, and what did that
do to him?
Yeah.
So I think before I got cut out, Daria was saying that she expected a bigger confrontation between Simon and Red, and I was about to say that I think it's because of that Simon was away in the fairy world. Oh, man. He was there for a lot longer than Sarah was, right? Like there was like a time difference.
For him, I think it was like lifetimes.
Yeah. So I guess he grew out of it.
But then he also said that he waited for her for like that long. The thought of her and her having that hair kept him going for all his years in Fairyland. And so to come out to find her with his brother, you think that would cause quite a conflict.
Yeah. Especially with his insecurities about his big brother too.
Yes, that's what drove him to do all those reckless things in the first place. I love tragedy and romance.
Same.
It was so good. It made me so happy when he was sad at the end, which makes me a monster essentially. But I was like, yes, because I didn't want Sorka and Red to be in pain, but like there needed to be some pain, and I got that, so I was happy about it.
No, but I want Simon to be happy in the long run.
Yeah, in the long run,
he's had enough pain.
Well, I think it was one of the things that I really liked is like how not open-ended it was, but like. She, I mean, Sorka even says it like how this isn't a fairy tale. If I was telling this story, I would wrap things up in a bow, essentially, and make things all happy and whatever. And Jolien Marillier kind of mirrors that with the ending, even though obviously Red comes back. But in my mind, and I can't remember if it was actually on page, but in my mind, Simon and Elaine have their happily ever after, because that was the original, like, he originally wanted Elaine and Elaine wanted him, but yeah.
I would like that. I would very much like, I'm very happy for Sarah and Red, and the fact that they've sort of gone back to Sevenwaters, because I figured that was sort of where it was going. But I really hope that we get to see everyone from England again. Like, if I don't get to see Marjorie again, I'll be upset.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
That's a good point. I feel like Una-sen would have again part of the open-endedness of it. So,
and I do feel like, from what I believe, this is a multi-generational story in the next for the rest of the series. So I do expect characters that are children or maybe not even born yet might be the focus of the next few books.
oh, I thought it was a mutual admiration society, but
I think he wanted her to begin with, but then he wanted Saoirse.
Yeah.
So is he going to want to go back to Elaine? I don't know.
I feel a bit sorry for Elaine. She's just getting passed left, right, and centre. No one wants her.
That is sad.
And she has that for a dad.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, poor Elaine has freaking Richard. He's very aptly named because he's a dick.
Have you been waiting for that one, Evie?
I've had it in my head this entire time. I'm like, come on, I gotta use it. But yeah, no, he's not. I don't think he's a traditional villain, but he's one of the most terrifying villains that I've ever read. But he doesn't do anything. Like, he's just. I don't know how to describe it. Like,
He's very mustache twirly.
Yeah, but not. But without it being like laughably mustached. I don't know. It's like a fine line.
Yeah. But he definitely had there was the scene where it's like, I'm going to tell you my entire plan because I think you're going to die.
And you can't talk anyway, so it's not like you can tell anyone.
I hated him. But then that was because he kept on making all those sort of sexual approaches to her, like, it was just slimy.
Yeah,
I hated him, but I also felt like he was realistic as well. I mean, thinking about the historical time period, if you've been brought up with this constant conflict between two nations, and you're constantly being at war all your life, if that's what your parents have known and what you've known, what you've been brought up with, and you're not going to trust them at all, or at least it's going to be very hard for you to trust them. So I feel like he was realistic in some ways. He's like, well, no, I'm not going to accept her because of all the pain that her family and her people have done to me. So I could see why, in some ways, he had been nurtured into being the way he was.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't he going behind England's back and talking to Ireland and colluding with them?
Yes.
So he was fine with
it, but that was to get back at. That was to like invade more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that he wanted to secure Elaine's position with Red and saw Sorka as a threat to that. So that would probably have added to it.
Yeah, that he'd want to secure his daughter's future and have. I mean, yeah, you can see that. You can see why he'd want to do that and make sure that his daughter had opportunities and good marriage.
Yeah, I mean,
he had the dog shot.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I'm not saying I supported him at all. He was absolutely despicable.
Yeah.
But I felt like he was realistic in his motivations.
Yeah, I would challenge that. I don't think he was trying to get Elaine a good life or anything like that. He was using her as a pawn to get more power. So, yeah, marry her to Red. Something mysterious, terrible happens to Red, and then he gets it. Gets the land and the whatever the lordship is, I guess. So, but speaking of dogs, Lynn.
Oh,
I know.
it was so horrible.
I had a hard time in this.
When I read it, I was like, is this what Robin Hobb is going to be like?
This is what I have to prepare myself for.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
prepare.
I just feel like we had to acknowledge it because
Mhm.
Lynn was so
Yeah.
such a good dog.
Such a good
Yeah.
time.
She was a good girl.
And
And it's
back
just-
to Lady. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was saying, and back to Lady Una. Like, I actually was angry at her for making Cormac attack Lynn, than for turning them all into swans.
Yeah.
Like, I hate violence towards animals. Just
Mhm.
I hate, and I find it really hard to read about. Not that I'm saying most people love it, but it instantly makes me like hate a character if they treat animals poorly.
Yeah, and I think Lynn's death when trying to protect Sorka in a way, it makes that scene of her assault even more harrowing.
Yes.
So, I mean, not that it's not terrible on its own, but
Just
I'm like
compound.
Sam. If you
Yeah.
hurt an animal, I will be infinitely more pissed off. So, but
I loved, I can't remember the name of the Simon's dog, the really old dog that she
Small
befriended.
terrier.
The one that gets shot with an arrow by Richard.
See, I was gonna have a running tally of all the animals that
Yeah.
get hurt over the course of this series.
specifically by Richard.
Yeah.
What, is Richard still around? I can't remember. Is he like in jail? Is he dead?
They ran him off and they caught him. I'm trying to go through it in my head. They caught him and they were going to bring him back. And I thought they were going to do like a trial or something for him.
Yeah, because that's why Red stayed back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I can't remember what the result of that trial was. Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I was so scared another dog would die. Yeah.
Once it happens once, you're always on edge. Then you're like, well, if she did this once, she could do it again.
That's true. Yeah, I think if I mean, Jolien, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he got his land stripped, and Simon basically, like, it wound up that Simon got the lordship, and again, in my head, I could have swore that
I think
Mary
that's happened as well, but it's been a while, so I'm not entirely sure. But I think so that Simon and Elaine got together and that they kind of met. The two lands got together as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think that anything horrible happened to Richard.
I don't think it's definitive. I don't think we know specifically the outcome
So
of
he
him.
could rise again.
Maybe.
Ugh, Richard. Anyways, what else was I gonna say? Got my notes here. I mean, we could gush about Finbar and how great he is.
Only Finbar, because everyone else is an entitled prick at the end. He never said thank you, and I hated it.
Oh. So can we scoot back to Finbar after we talk about what Vish just said? Because that infuriated me. I was like, she has just spent how many years of her life torturing herself so you can be human again, and they're just treating her like a child. And they've witnessed everything that he's been through, or a lot of it.
Yeah.
It infuriated me.
And Connor, like, conveniently saying after, like, Red confesses his feelings, like, oh yeah, I knew you'd end up together. I'm like, please. You're saving face now. No.
I did really like her father at that small.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was the reunion between Sorka and her father, Colum, I think, was pretty emotional, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it must be a strange dynamic because they took care of her their entire lives. Like, she was their baby sister, and they did see her on a yearly basis, but saw her for very short periods of time. So I don't think the way that they treated her is okay. And I was also very upset, and it's so frustrating, but it's such a such a true family dynamic. Like they all come out and they expect to be the same family and the same people that they were, where they were kind of not in charge of what she was doing, but like they had a lot of supervisory, like they had a very supervisory role over her upbringing. And I think they expect her to still be that little sister and not a grown woman who has gone through all these trials. And there must be a lot of guilt there too, because they know some of the really bad things that have happened and they have been unable to shield her from that. So I can see why they would feel very protective. And I mean, it's definitely misogynistic, but again, that's pretty true to the time as well. But it was very frustrating, but understandably frustrating, I think.
Yeah. I didn't hate them. I was just rolling my eyes.
Yes. Yeah. It's very irritating. I think it also just gives us a chance to appreciate that Finbar is like a prince among
Yes.
everyone.
I really hope we do see him again. At least I don't know. Because the last thing we saw of him was just a feather and his shirt, and that was it. So we're just interpreting that he turned into a swan and went to find his swan family, which is
A swan family.
You know.
That was so sad.
I really hope we see him again, at least.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, it's very like open with where the brothers are, like what's happened to all the brothers. They've all just gone off, disappeared, and I'm like, they better come back, or we better like hear what they're doing in later installments.
Mm-hmm. I agree with Millie. I really like the druid aspect. I always like it when there's druids in historical fantasy. I find it so fascinating, and it would be cool to find out more about them in future books.
Yeah.
Well,
because they're really touched very lightly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it says in the story, I can't remember who said it, but like, it's basically Sorka was gonna be, like, she's gonna be the continuing line of Sevenwaters. So like, there's this assumption and illusion that the brothers really aren't gonna have families or whatever. They're gonna go off and do their own thing. So but I am curious if they're gonna like come back around or if they're just gonna poof, be gone.
No, they better not poof be gone. They better like I want resolution, please.
Dermot can poof and be gone. I wasn't that bad. He was a bit annoying.
With his rage and revenge.
With his rage. I understand the rage.
Yeah.
But it was like completely clouding his judgment, and I was like, she's back. Like, you got your whole family back.
He was becoming Tao from Rage Dragons.
Yeah, exactly, Barry. And that's, even though that was so bittersweet, I also liked that because Sorka sacrificed so much for her family, but then you see that Finbar actually does the same thing for her, his original family.
Mm-hmm.
So with him, I can understand the exchange. With the other brothers, they were a little bit ungrateful, but Finbar...
Yeah. But he's also the one that kind of... He's like... He's the one brother that actually kind of ties everything together. He's the one that finds Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I feel like it's a good bookend type arc for him. And with Sorka, so. But sorry, Sam, go ahead.
So, because they were linked, they could talk to each other.
Yeah.
And
Connor too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was sort of eavesdropping on them for most of their childhood. So when Finbar, he had that vision, I don't know if it was like the first time they came back as humans and he was terrified by it. Was that chapter 6? Or do we know what?
Scene.
Yeah, that's what, yeah. Okay. I didn't know if that had come to pass yet. So his arm, is it a wing? Is it an arm with feathers?
I saw it as a wing in my head. I saw it like
everything.
The whole arm is a wing.
Oh, okay.
So I envisioned it as like he had no arm. Like to a normal like person, it would look like he had no arm. But like for people that have the ability to see like the fairy realm type thing, that they could see like an outline of like a swan arm or swan.
Oh no, mine was a very visible swan wing that everyone could see.
But I like that definitive like that because it adds to the fairy tale atmosphere, like that we could all read it and think different things about it. Just makes it feel more magical.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just
I
at
love that people. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I love that the people of Sevenwaters just accepted they had a wing. Like when they came back, like all the villagers were just like.
It's a very magical life there. They are accustomed to different things with people disappearing with the fairies. I mean, that's all set up in like the exposition bit at the beginning where they're like, this is our life. People go off into the forest. They may come back the next day having aged. They may come back in 100 years having not aged. Like, it's just what they're brought up with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we live here in the UK because, you know, we're still in the Dark Ages and that's what happens.
Don't tell Alan.
I was gonna say need to update Alan that he thinks it's like industrialized and stuff. So, but yeah. So we're at 45 minutes. I don't want to keep anybody too much longer, especially Vish. I know getting late for you. So
9 p.m.
Listen, I would be in bed by 9 p.m. So what does that say about me? Anywho. Yeah, any like final-ish thoughts, anything that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about, that you're itching to talk about?
Did you say at the beginning, because I have questions on it, like the original trilogy versus the 6 books, like what happened there? Was it like a trilogy that then got extended, or what quite happened?
Jolien probably knows the best answer to that.
So I have only read the first 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know what the other 3 are about. And the first 3 are really like one arc. So you have each of the books and they each have a romance. So that's like really at the forefront. But then you have one overarching arc that you might already guess what it is, but I'm just going to keep quiet. It's really at the background. And then at the end of the 3rd book, you have the finale, and that's really the end of this story. But there are some characters that you meet in these 3 books that then will start the next 3,
Right.
but I haven't read those yet. So I do think that it's really 2 trilogies.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't there a new series that's set in the same world, or is that?
I believe the one that I have, the Dreamer's Pool, is set within the same world. I haven't read it.
Okay, but not. Is it? Oh, no, it's not. Is it separately to the 6?
I think it's separate, just same world.
Yeah.
And then she also has Harpy's Flight, right? And then Wildwood Dancing, which did you finish the 2nd book already or no?
I'm going to start the 2nd one. It's her YA. I think she has 2 YA series.
Well,
there's quite a few listed in the back here. Like there's the Brideye Chronicles as well.
Yes, that one is very good. But it's more historically accurate because King Brideye was really a king. So he's a real historical figure. And the battles that she talks about in that trilogy really happened. But they don't really know a lot about that period. So, of course, a lot is her own interpretation.
Right.
But it's still with some romance in between. And each of the books you can read as a standalone. But that's one of those series. I think it was going to be a quartet. And then the last book, she wrote it, but it wasn't published.
Oh.
Yeah. But still, if I didn't know that and I was reading the trilogy, I would have still thought that it had a nice ending. So you don't really notice it.
Well, on that note, no pressure, but reconvene for book 2. Son of the Shadow.
Can't wait.
All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for joining in chat. I will be more prepared next time. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And hopefully see you in Discord and share your thoughts as you're reading Son of the Shadows, because it's gonna be great. Writing style does not change, so I'm just excited for the story itself. Yeah, so thank you everyone here for joining me on screen. It was great. Yes. Oh crap. Yes, doggy. Bye, Tavia. Thank you for joining. Yeah, and yeah, have a great day, night, wherever you are. And if you're watching this back, bye.
Life.
Okay.